Welcome back to Point and Shoot, our monthly show about basic photography. I'm your host, Susan Hagstrom, and today I'm very happy to welcome my guest, Sarah HInchey. Sarah's here. She has her studio very close to Hingham Square. It's located actually at 234 North Street, and she's going to be talking to us about her photography specializing in newborn, maternity, and child photography. So thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned your studio located down in Hingham. I know it's a little bit new, right? How long have you been at that location?
I opened there in July.
Okay.
So just a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that your first studio, or were you located somewhere else, or how did you set that up?
I was previously in a home studio and worked mostly on location. So this is my first retail studio location.
So I imagine that's good, offering you a lot more flexibility and your own workspace. And
definitely, yeah, it's been great.
Working out well.
Yeah.
I know it's very convenient for people who live on the South Shore. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But let's go back and talk about how you first got your start in photography. When did you first get interested in photography, and how long have you been a pro?
Yeah, great question. So I've always been kind of a more creative person or an artist, whether it was singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting. And I think when you're a creative person, you can really express that through a lot of different mediums.
Right.
So I would say I first became interested in photography about 8 years ago, just from looking at wedding blogs. And I became so inspired by the beautiful imagery that I was seeing. So I decided to go back to school to learn photography.
Okay.
And I've been doing it professionally now for 4 years.
Okay, and so then your training then was formal. You went back to study formally.
It was, yeah. So I started off at the Center for Digital Imaging and Arts at BU, and was able to kind of learn some of the basics and fundamentals there. And then I've been really lucky enough to have mentored and trained with some really well-known portrait photographers.
Oh, wonderful.
And yeah, I've always been pretty committed to training and education and really elevating my images and what I'm delivering. Yeah. There's
always something new to learn, always
my gosh,
new techniques and editing and shooting as well. So let's talk about that shooting. We on this show like to talk a lot about gear. Photographers are always interested in the gadgets and the technology. What do you use as far as camera and lenses?
So I'm a Canon shooter. I have a 5D Mark III.
Okay. That's a pretty new camera. How are you liking that?
Yeah, I love it. I've had it, I want to say maybe 2 years now, maybe 3 years. But I love it. It's great. And then for lenses, when I'm on location, I really like to use my 70 to 200 predominantly.
Portrait lens?
Yep. I love the background compression that you can get at 200 millimeters. And then in the studio with newborns, I use mostly my 50 millimeter prime. 50 millimeter 1.4. And then occasionally I'll use a 35 millimeter prime, particularly for overhead shots, just because I'm so short and I want to get more in the frame.
Okay. And so you just mentioned quickly about portraits. That's mostly your business is portraiture. And how did you come to specialize in that area?
So I really got a strong passion for maternity photography because when I was pregnant, I just felt so uncomfortable and awkward, and to me at that time there was nothing beautiful about it. I just did not feel beautiful at all. And every time someone would try to take a picture, I would hide from the camera, and I don't have a single picture of myself from when I was pregnant, and it's a really big regret of mine, especially now that my son is a little bit older. I would love to have a picture, even just to show him, to say this is what it looked like. And so it's really a passion of mine to be able to show women how beautiful and stunning they really look when they're pregnant, and capture that time in their life in a beautiful way so that they can have it, and so that 20, 30, 40 years from now they can show their kids
Right.
and their grandkids.
That's great. I do think that's probably easier said than done. I will say, to get a picture that shows someone, we're going to see some images, so I know it's been done. But, to really make that person look beautiful, especially if they're not feeling beautiful, because we know as photographers, what people are feeling does, that is seen through your lens.
Definitely.
So I imagine there's a big art to that.
Yeah, and I always tell every woman I photograph, not just maternity clients, but moms too, no one hates having their picture taken more than I do. Like, I hate being in front of the camera.
Right.
Which is why I'm
That's
a photographer.
probably true, right, for most photographers. That's a common thread on this show.
So I really try to be very sensitive to that when I photograph other women. And I would never leave them hanging out there in front of the camera not knowing what to do. So I really do pose them,
give them a lot of direction,
to within an inch of their life.
Okay, good. Now, as far as the newborn and child photography, that, again, I think is tricky. The subjects oftentimes are great. I mean, kids, I think, most kids, really are adorable, and they have good personalities. And so you've got a lot to work with, but there are some challenges that come with that as well. What do you find challenging about, let's start with newborns. What do you find challenging about photographing newborns?
I think, photographing newborns really is a highly skilled craft. There's a lot that goes into photographing a newborn, because you have to not only be educated in photography, like lighting and composition and exposure and all of that, but you also have to know how to work with the babies.
Right.
And there really is an art to getting the newborn to sleep and stay asleep and posing them.
Right.
And, maintaining the whole safety element and making sure that they're posed safely.
Good point. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how, given those challenges, how do you address those?
So, safety is always number one.
Okay.
So, a lot of the shots that you see photographers doing with hanging babies, or when the baby has their head on in their hands, those are composite shots.
Okay.
For the baby's safety. So you take multiple images and put them together into one piece of art. And then, just a lot of tricks to make the baby fall asleep and keep them asleep, like keeping the room very warm.
Okay.
White noise is great.
Oh, okay.
Swaddling them.
Okay, good. So there's some tricks. If you had 3 tips, or 2 or 3 tips that you would give to parents taking their own pictures. I mean, everyone has an iPhone, and really lots of parents, I know that's when I started getting into photography. When you have children, you want to take pictures of them.
Yeah,
and so whether it's your own DSLR or an iPhone, do you have a couple quick tips that you could give to parents to take better pictures of their own kids?
So the first would be turn off your camera's flash. And if you're indoors, turn off any overhead lights or lamps.
Okay.
And get your child over to a window or a door, or even take them outside and really take advantage of the natural light.
Okay, good.
Because that will always create beautiful imagery. And then another tip would be, as parents, we're always so inclined to get pictures of our kids looking at the camera, smiling. And I know we're all guilty of calling out your child's name, smile, say cheese. But, in the future, we're going to want to remember all of their expressions, not just their picture smile. So, take off the pressure for them to perform.
That's a great
some
tip.
more emotive, soulful, thoughtful expressions in there too.
Those are great tips.
Sometimes those can be even more inspirational than the smiling ones.
Good. Okay. I think those are a couple great tips for parents out there. Of course, nothing will replace going to a pro, but like I said, with iPhones and DSLRs, you're out at soccer games or wherever, or like you say, a quiet moment, maybe they're getting ready for bed, the bathtub, whatever. As a parent, you're there. So, it's spontaneous, I guess. Right. So a couple really good tips for taking better pictures of your kids. So Sarah also, in addition to specializing in the maternity, newborn, and child photography, has her studio right near downtown Hingham, has a little bit of a different way that she reviews pictures with her clients and goes through the purchasing session. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to take a closer look at some of Sarah's images. I think you will be able to see the types of efforts she's gone into really getting the best out of her clients. So we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. Come right back. Hey, welcome back to Point and Shoot. We're here today talking to my guest, Sarah HInchey. She has her studio right down near Hingham Square at 234 North Street in Hingham. She specializes in newborn, maternity, and child photography, and she does studio as well as on-location sessions. So she's kind of a all-purpose studio there. We've been talking about those specializing in newborn and child and maternity photos, and now we're going to get to take a look at some samples. So let's take a look here. Okay, so Sarah, what can you tell me about how you set this up, I guess?
So this image was taken at Nantasket Beach in Hull.
Okay.
And one of the things I love about this picture, it goes back to what I was saying about not always needing the child looking at the camera, smiling with their picture face.
Good example.
She has such a soulful, thoughtful, pensive look, and there's just such a strong connection in that image for me.
Right. That's good. I like the colors too.
Thank you.
Okay, and so this one, is this the same?
So that's from the same session.
Okay.
And two of the things I always love to show in my images are movement and connection. And even though a lot of my images look candid,
yeah.
There is a bit of direction that happens behind the scenes to get a candid-looking image where everyone looks flattering.
Right.
So for this image, I love it because it shows movement.
Right.
And it was a game of Ring Around the Rosie.
Oh, very cute. So something they're familiar with, not taking them out of their comfort zone. Okay. All right. And how about this? Where was this taken?
So that one was also at Nantasket. And that was taken at 200 millimeters, so you can really notice the background compression.
I was going to ask, is this shot into the light a little bit?
It is, yep. So she's backlit.
Okay.
So I'm shooting right into the sun, which also gives it that kind of hazy effect that I really love. That's
a thing that you have to practice with, I think. But if you can get it, it's a very dramatic. It's different. I mean, it's we're always told to follow the rules and have the sun behind you, but you can break those rules and you can try different things, and that's an interesting exercise to try.
Right. And if you get your subject right in between the sun and you, then you can eliminate the lens flare.
Good.
Lens flare is nice, but you don't want it for every picture. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, let's see what's next. So what do we have here?
So this is from that same session, also at Nantasket.
Okay.
And I do provide wardrobe for all of my maternity clients. So a lot of the dresses I make myself.
Some I
just have on hand.
Wow.
But this is a dress that I get asked about all the time, and I love it. I love the colors. Yeah.
Is that the same session?
Yep, this is the same session, and I love that it shows movement. Even though she's standing still, you still get a lot of movement from the water and from her dress blowing behind her.
So that seems like a good thing for budding photographers to work on, because you're not so worried with, you're focusing in, I would imagine, on the subject. You've got her eyes nice and sharp, but then like you're saying, you have that movement, which is just, sort of happening, but you must use still a pretty fast shutter speed in order to get the action a little bit clear.
Yep, on the 200 millimeter, I never go lower than 200 on the shutter speed.
All right.
So this was a studio maternity shot.
Okay.
And I lit this with an Alien B400.
Okay.
And it just goes to show, when you're thinking about wardrobe for your maternity clients, it doesn't have to be a dress.
Okay.
This is actually one of my scarves.
Oh my gosh.
It's a Michael Starr scarf that I just got up at the Derby Shops from Evereve. But it looks beautiful.
Very creative,
The movement is, I had a fan on her.
I was going to say,
to get it through her hair and the scarf.
Yeah, so on the lighting there, you've got her sort of lit on one side and then a little bit darker on the other, but not too much of a huge difference so that it's,
I would say my light was about at a 40-degree angle.
Okay. Yeah. And now one good thing about doing the studio shot, I would imagine you've got control over the elements, right? So you take advantage of that?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, good. So you do both studio and on-location shots. So depending on what the person is looking for.
Right. And the time of year. We don't want to do on location if we have snow like last winter.
That's probably true, right? All right, let's take a look at the next one. All right.
So this is a baby that I just photographed a couple days ago. And with my maternity photography, I really like to keep it more minimal and simple without a ton of props or intricate backdrops, headbands, and things like that.
Right.
I really like the focus to just be on the baby. So I do keep it pretty minimal as far as props go. And this was also lit with the 400, the Alien B 400.
And is that a little bit angled off to one side?
The light was at 90 degrees
okay,
there,
so yeah.
because I did want to get a little bit of shadow to kind of pull out his features.
Right. How old is this baby?
He was, I think he was a month, but he came a few weeks early. So I think his adjusted age, I think we photographed this right before his due date.
Oh my gosh, that's just adorable. And I see what you're saying, it's just simple. And it's shot pretty much straight on?
Yep, shot straight on.
Okay.
Yep. And then I added a texture in post-processing to give the backdrop a little bit of detail.
Okay, so that's in your studio?
Yeah,
that was taken in your
that
studio.
was shot on seamless paper.
Okay. Take a look at the next one.
So this is something I've been doing a lot lately, which is focusing on just all white, photographing newborns on all white. It's very pure and elegant, and it kind of, it's got that minimalist quality that I love.
Right.
And I've been using a lot of negative space in the images because it really shows off how small the babies are and how delicate their little features are.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's simple, sort of the less is more, right? The simpler, especially with a newborn. I like that you say the background with the white. I mean, white is purity. So that I didn't think about that, but now that you point that out, that's really interesting. All right, let's take a look at the next one.
So this one I'm a little biased because that's my son.
I think that's okay.
And I, of course, had to include a picture of him. But
He's a good model.
He's a great model, but it was shot in the studio using the Alien B 400 and a softbox modifier. And I had the light, I think, around 45 degrees for that picture. But I love the connection in that image. The connection is just so strong for me. And of course, his favorite thing about the picture is his Spider-Man tattoo.
Yeah, the tattoo. I was going to say, my favorite thing is the dimple, but of course, I'm not surprised.
So this image was taken in Beacon Hill, and I love it because a lot of times I'll take pictures during the in-between moments. So I'll give the family some direction about what to do, and then I'll give them a new direction and take a picture when they're kind of switching.
Okay.
And I like doing that because their guard is down, they're a little bit relaxed, and that's when you can sometimes capture a really genuine, authentic emotion.
Right.
And in this picture, I just finished taking some images with the father and his daughter together, and I asked the mom to join the group. And they both looked at her in this just really loving way, which I thought was so sweet.
This is a really good example of what you were saying before, where neither of these subjects is looking directly at the camera, but yet it works perfectly. I think maybe especially because they're both looking in the same direction. So there's sort of that tension between the two of them, and then they're looking, and their smiles are just so natural. They're not over smiling.
And
but,
I loved delivering this image to the mom because as moms, we rarely get to see how our kids look at us.
Them. That's great. So now we're back at the beach.
Yep, back at the beach. That was taken at Duxbury Beach. And again, it goes back to you don't have to show your kid smiling and looking at the camera. This image, you can't even see his face, but his personality comes through so strongly to me. And that's why I love that picture.
Right.
The other thing I really like about that picture, which I try to do in a lot of my images, is get a good amount of foreground in the front of the picture and the background, because it kind of tells a story, beginning, middle, end.
Good example. Okay. And here's one more.
So this was taken up at World's End. Shows movement and just really genuine, thoughtful expression. I do like to backlight my subjects as much as possible when I'm shooting on location. So this is a good example of that. And when I'm helping families decide on wardrobe, I always recommend choosing materials that allow the light to shine through, like tulle or chiffon. because you really do get nice highlights when they're backlit like that.
That's a great point. Do you know what time of year this is? Is this spring?
It was taken this spring.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Late spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the barefoot. I like you say, the light coming through. You can almost even see it. I mean, I'm looking really closely, but you can see the light coming through like her toes almost. You know, it's just that little
I love using backlight
contrast.
outside.
Yeah, that really has something different. That's beautiful. Okay, so I think that was really some great examples highlighting the techniques that you've been talking about. Now just tell us quickly about your review process that you use with your clients.
Yeah, so after the session, I go through all of the captures and I choose the best 20 images. And I do a complete high-end retouch on all 20. And then after the session, the family will come back to the studio for their viewing appointment, where they get to see all 20 images in their gallery printed as 7x10s, matted and 11x14 mats.
Okay.
And the reason why I love doing that is in this day and age, we're so used to seeing pictures on a screen, only ever on a screen, our iPhone, our laptop.
Exactly.
And there's just something to be said for having an actual physical print.
Right.
I have shelves in the studio, so once you go through each individual image, we put them up on the wall and you can see your entire gallery all at once.
Okay.
And I know I'm a visual person, and
Right.
so for other people like me, it just makes the selection process a lot easier when you can see them all at once and take your favorites down. And
Right.
the most popular product that I offer is a silk image box that fits those matted prints. And it's perfect because you can put individual ones on an easel and rotate them out.
Okay.
They're matted in 11x14, so you can frame them or you can gift them.
Okay.
And you get to take them home with you right after your viewing
Yeah.
appointment. So it's instant gratification.
Good. Okay, well, if you're wondering exactly how that session plays out, you're in luck, because we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to be inside Sarah's studio, so you'll get to take a look at how she has that set up. And we're going to see her in action reviewing some prints with a client. So we're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned and come back. Hey, welcome back to Point and Shoot. I'm your host, Susan Hagstrom. We've been talking today to our guest, Sarah HInchey. She's a photographer right down here, very close to Hingham Square at 234 North Street. This is her studio. We're going to go in and talk to Sarah and a client. She has a little bit of a different way of reviewing her products with them. We're going to take a look at how she does that today inside of her studio. So let's go in and take a look.
So I'm here today with my client, Andrea, and she is going to be viewing her images from our session for the first time. This is her viewing appointment. Are you excited?
Yes,
all right, so I'll let you go through the images one by one here. What do you think?
They're beautiful. I can't wait to
like
try
them?
them. Yeah, me too.
Good. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll put these all up on the shelves for you so you can see them all at once.
Okay, great.
So I think you got a pretty good idea about how that review session goes. It's a little different and it seems to be very effective. The client I know looked very pleased today. So I hope you guys learned something. Thank you to my guest, Sarah HInchey, and her client today for helping us out. I hope you're gonna use this information in your own shooting. I hope if you're interested in these kinds of shots, you'll give Sarah a call. Maybe you'd like to hire her for a shoot. And in the meantime, go out and make some photos. All you have got to do, point and shoot.